Welcome to Tales from the Drive-In. Grab some popcorn and tune in as we discuss the wondrous curiosities of the world on and off the screen. I'm your host, BJ, filmmaker, paranormal enthusiast, and horror fanatic. Joining me today is David Luke, a fellow filmmaker who has a love for horror and personal experience with the paranormal. So let's get started. As one of our favorite horror actors from the 80s once said, "Thrill me." So welcome. How's it going?
Going great. Great to be here.
You are my second guest, so that's exciting.
I've been really stoked to come on your show. This is going to be great.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that I can get that's has, film background, has horror movies background, has paranormal background, any of that kind of stuff, I'm all for it. So, and you definitely have all of those things, which is really nice. We can just kind of jump in and start it. Start with horror first. What influenced your love for horror films when you first started?
Wow, I'm honestly not sure exactly where it started. I'm not exactly sure, but I do remember. I remember that I was always into the holiday Halloween, and when I got to be kind of an older teenager, I started getting into scary movies. I hadn't been into them previously, but I started getting into them. And whenever AMC would have their Halloween marathon, I would just take it all in. It was great. Uh,
Nice.
I really like the classics. That hasn't always been the case. I remember one Halloween season. I'm watching AMC. There's nothing else on television. No surprise. One of the old Hammer classics came on. I had that idea that you know, uh, movies made before a certain date probably didn't have as much of an edge. I thought, well, there's nothing else on. It's 2 o'clock in the morning. I'll watch it. And it was the old Hammer classic, The Curse of Frankenstein from 1957.
Nice.
And as I'm watching this, I'm realizing just how wrong I was that old movies weren't as edgy as the new stuff. And eventually, I came to the end of the movie, enjoyed every minute of it, and I thought, wow, I'm totally wrong about this. These old classics are just as good, if not better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's a reason why the 80s took a lot of the classics and brought them back, right?
Yeah,
I mean, but I think obviously the 80s did a better job of, I guess, reboots than, current times, or at least it seems like that. Um,
oh yeah, before CGI and all that digital junk.
yeah, exactly. It kind of takes the heart out of it a little bit, and
Exactly.
so, so yeah, so Halloween, obviously that franchise is a little weird because of Halloween 3, right? It kind of came out of nowhere. It's like,
Yeah.
why are you calling it Halloween, but there's no, Michael Myers? Like, why would you do that? But did you enjoy that one?
In retrospect, I don't know if I did. It's one of those ones that if it wasn't named Halloween, I probably could enjoy it. But because it has the Halloween name, you expect certain things. You expect it to be in Haddonfield. You expect Doc Loomis to be
Right.
there. You expect it to be. You expect a trip to the Myers house. And you don't get any of that stuff.
Yeah.
So but it's so strange now. Halloween is like a Doctor Strange multiverse with all these alternate timelines and stuff. Uh, and I've always been one that thought that Halloween 20 years later doesn't necessarily have to be an alternate timeline. It can follow part 6. because there was that moment where she said that she faked her own death.
Hmm.
So I think that can tie into Halloween 4, where Jamie thought her mom Lori had been killed. I always think, I've always thought that she would have to have some reason for taking the boy and leaving the girl behind. And I thought, if she saw that her daughter had the thorn mark on her right after she was born, she might leave her behind if she thought it was the only way to save the son.
Hmm.
And I realize separating the twins, that makes her Obi-Wan, but you know, for a diehard fan like me, you search for reasons to bring it all into the same timeline, because
To make it okay.
even though it wasn't, even though I didn't like 20 Years Later quite as much as I liked 4, 5, and 6, it still wasn't a bad movie, and you want to include it in my head.
Yeah. So did you so how the Halloween franchise, is that your favorite? Was there another one that you liked equally or
Oh, that's a hard one. That's probably the franchise I watched the most. It's I've always thought Halloween 2 was equally good as the first one. I think the first one is a little bit better just because of such a dynamic ending.
yeah.
You know, you look out and it's an empty yard. How they could make that the scariest scene in the entire movie? That's just cinema magic to me. How they can make an empty yard be the scariest shot of the film. I always thought that Halloween 2, if it hadn't been for Halloween 1's really outstanding ending, I don't know. I think Halloween 2 would be equally good,
Yeah.
just because I just love the writing. How they're sitting in the car, and he's talking about the old Druid ritual that they would actually burn people alive, and they thought they could see omens of the future, and it ends with him dying, I say in quotation marks, in a fire. And I've always thought that was just the most clever way of saying, hang on, there's more to come. I've
Yeah.
always thought that.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of John Carpenter. I mean, not just for Halloween, but all of his films, his the way he's able to create awesome, memorable music to all of his films, and just he just got a style of his own that's just entertaining. Like whether it's horror, action, or fantasy. I don't like, for example, Big Trouble in Little China. I don't even know what you
Yeah.
would call that. Like, I guess
Mm,
maybe a fantasy kung fu film. I don't know,
yeah.
but it has his flavor for it, and a lot of those horror movies in the 80s, especially that one, and The Thing, right? There was a lot of
Yeah.
good stuff that came from him, specifically The Fog, right?
Oh man, that's probably my favorite Carpenter movie, if not my favorite horror film altogether.
Yeah, why The Fog?
I just love the writing. I thought that scene where the two ladies are at the church, and the priest is talking to them, and I forget their characters' names. Nick and Elizabeth.
Hmm.
They're on the boat, Seagrass, and between both scenes happening parallel, you get the entire story of what happened originally. Only things are only the characters don't. So the audience gets information, and the characters don't get the entire story, but you do. I've always thought that was just brilliant storytelling, and I've always felt that in its own way, it's kind of a biblical allegory. Just in that there's so much Christian symbolism in that movie. Six conspirators, that's a number associated with the devil. The six conspirators are the antagonist of the movie, that their ancestors that set them up. So honestly, I don't consider the ghosts villains really. Of course, the sea giving up its dead, and the payment for the town's sins is literally a cross. I thought that was just brilliant storytelling.
Nice. Did you get into, we're talking about like biblical stuff. Did you ever get into the any of the Exorcists or any of those types of movies, The Omen, any stuff, any things like
I,
that? Like
yeah, I actually, The Exorcist. I love the scary imagery of that movie, but honestly, their theology is incorrect because the priest allows this particular demon to possess him, and while it's in the process, he jumps out the window, killing it. And that's actually not theologically correct. It's if a person is a true believer, if they believe in God, then God's spirit is within them, and demons can't enter.
mhm.
So whenever I watch that movie, I think, well, there's a lot of great directing here, but the theology is incorrect.
Yeah, and Hollywood's gonna take whatever they want and kind of leave the rest. I mean, there are some things in there, I'm sure, for because that's not the audience they're looking for, right? They're not looking for people who know everything about the theology, right? Because they're probably not even watching horror movies.
True, but it's funny, it's funny how people kind of assume that there's no such thing as Christian horror, but anyone who watches M. Night Shyamalan's Signs or Stephen King's The Stand, those really qualify.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, there's so many. There's so many. I mean, you could think about any. I mean, even Poltergeist, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot in that movie as well. I mean, I enjoy that one. That one's one of my favorite. It's kind of oddly like a comfort movie
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
me. I don't know why, but it. I guess because everybody like survives and they get out and all of that. But my next question, and it's something that I didn't send you before, but I thought about it. I've been thinking about it a little while. But basically, if you could spend a day in a horror film, in the world of a horror film,
Mm.
which one would it be and why? And you don't have to
Wow.
die. Like, you could be like a fly on the wall and observe everything, or you could be a character in it that doesn't exist but that's just in it, and then
Wow, that is a hard one. That is a really hard one. That is a hard one. I honestly don't know if I know the answer to that one. That's tricky. But mm, wow.
right, because you could be in the movie, you can experience everything firsthand. So it's even more so. You're immersed in it, right? You're sitting on the couch with them. You're part of it, but you're not being obviously
Wow.
murdered or anything like that. So, and for me, when I think of that question, I think about which director, which writer built the best world, which one was the most interesting, which one do I want to walk around in, because it's not just the scary parts, it's like the city too. Like, what would it be fun to hang out with the people in the city that live there, right?
Yeah.
For me, I can answer first, just so you can think about it for a second. But the movie Critters for me is kind of one of those films, because I in Critters 2 as well. Just the way they built the family, the city, the town people, and then you get the bounty hunters, and then you get the critters. So there's so much going on, and it feels like a horror in space. And I brought this up in my last podcast with my brother, and it is one of my favorite movies because it's got the fun of the Gremlins, but it's also got a sci-fi aspect to it that oh, I want to know more. Because when I was a kid, at the very end of Critters, the bounty hunters give the kid their like a pager, like a space pager, I guess you would call it,
Mm.
to be like, hey, give us a call if you need help, or if something happens again. And as a kid, I'm like, oh man, that would be so cool to be able to call bounty hunters from space to come visit, right? Like,
Mm.
so that's what I would think of. Or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's really a hard one. I don't know if it really qualifies as horror, but I don't know. It would be fun to be in one of the underworld movies, just because this ancient war with these two factions of virtually immortal people who remember things going back to medieval times. It might be fun to play a member of one of the factions.
That would be amazing. Absolutely. Because you get to hang out with all of the family members, or you can, you have all this knowledge, you have all these toys, you have all this society, and yeah, and all of them look really really good.
Yeah,
Like
this, they have the leather trench coats and everything.
yeah, and just to hang out with Kate Beckinsale, the way she looks in those
Yeah.
movies, good lord. Um,
Mm,
yeah, but those I really enjoy.
that's what every guy would be
I
thinking.
know. No, I enjoy those films. I mean, some people, I don't know why people, I mean, not the, I would say the last couple I weren't the best, but I would say like the first two or three. I like the one
Yeah.
where they go back in time, right? When they do the prequel,
Rise of the Lycans.
Rise of the Lycans. Yeah, that one was really good because Lucian, right? Lucian was he I think made that series. Him and Kate Beckinsale, right?
Yeah.
They did it such a good job, and so
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
I think that's a really good
And
answer.
the actor who plays Victor, there are only a few actors that can completely overdo their part, and they do it so well you don't even care.
Yeah.
It's like it's like the guy who plays Victor. He's one of them. Of course, Donald Pleasance from Halloween. It's like if anyone else overdid their lines like either of those two, you'd say this movie's ridiculous. When either of them do it, you just think, I love these films.
Well, yeah.
It's like,
Well, who would you be in that world then? Would you be like Victor's like lackey, like his assistant,
ooh, that's
or would you be
that
on the,
is a
or
hard
would you
one.
want to be on the Lycan side, or would you just be like
Mm.
one of the humans that's just kind of caught up in it?
Oh, that's a hard one. That is a hard one. That is a hard one. I guess the Lycans are technically the good guys since Victor's leading the other side. So I, that's a hard one. Still, you'd love to play a villain.
Right.
I'd love to play a bad guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually I thought up a script one time where that's what you could do. Like you could, it's kind of a Black Mirror idea where you could live in like almost like a Total Recall thing where you can play out this story that you've created in a, you give the whoever's putting your story together all of the information, and then you kind of just get to play it out
Oh,
um,
that's
as a
cool.
vampire, right? Like you're like, ooh, like here are all the things I love about vampires. Create a world for me and let me live in it for a little while, kind of thing.
That would be a blast.
So yeah, because there's so many different versions of vampire worlds. So I take it back. There is another world I would like to live in. Is the world of the Lost Boys. Um,
Oh yes.
yeah, like that would be a fun town to live in. I mean, you know, um, go on the roller coasters, concerts at night.
Mm,
The vampires are super cool. You get to go with this underground, the cave, and have all kinds of fun. It's just free and whatever. It's kind of, I mean, you rule the city, like, and everybody else is afraid, and so nothing to worry about, really.
mm. Yeah, it's so funny how that movie gets into your psyche. The lines from it, it's like I remember. I think I'm a huge Dune buggy. I love every version of Dune that's ever been on the screen. And somebody posted on Facebook like little Christmas tree up on a stack of books, and I noticed one of them was Dune. And I immediately heard Corey Feldman in my head going, "That's a very serious book, man."
Yeah, that it's funny his character in that movie. Like, I don't know if anybody else could play that character because it's just so over the top and ridiculous, and he's to the he's 10, at a from 1 to 10 he's at an 11 or 12, right? Like
Exactly.
him and his
Exactly.
brother, they're just like, well, this is what we signed up for. And what's funny, what I love about that movie is that they never really like they freak out, they get scared, but they never really like, this isn't what we signed up for. Like it's like,
Mm,
I guess we're gonna keep doing it, like, because it's real now. Like, I guess we're fake it till you make it. We gotta show this guy that we're for real.
mm,
So yeah, that's a fun part of it too. Just that atmosphere, right? What that they built. It's just good time. It's a fun film.
it is. It is. I mean, just and such a great blend of scary and humor, all rolled into one. It's like, you know, that blend of horror and comedy. I mean, you really wouldn't be surprised if John Goodman's character from Arachnophobia came around the corner and decided to help out. You really wouldn't.
Exactly. Yeah, and honestly, like that's part of the reason why you'd want to spend a day in that world, because that's part of it. It would be the humor, it would be all of it. So it wouldn't just be the scary drab. It wouldn't just be, the horror and the violence. There would be some style to it. There would be some comedy, right? And
Yeah,
that's part of the fun, and that to happen to you while you're just living that day, I think that would be pretty awesome.
definitely, definitely. That would be, what a fun movie to be a part of. That would be outstanding.
Actually, this weekend I'm going to, so in Fort Collins there's this movie theater called the Lyric, and they do indoor movies and outdoor movies. They have an outdoor screen as well, and they're on, what is it, on Thursday. Wait, what is today? Tuesday. So yeah, on
Uh,
Thursday they are playing The Lost Boys, they're doing it outside, but the saxophone player from the movie is going to be there. So he's actually going to be playing.
I remember that. I remember that scene. I
Yeah.
remember that scene. Yeah, that guy. He's got the oil all over him in the.
Right. That's like the one scene that everybody's like, this is kind of weird and out of nowhere, but I guess we have to have it. I don't know. I guess it makes sense. But I honestly, I love it. Like, I love that song. I love the entire soundtrack, for that film. It's so good. Everything seems to fit well, right? Like, so many movies that it's lightning in a bottle and it just kind of works. And that, I feel like that was one of them that they never should have made sequels for.
Definitely, definitely. It's like some movies, that they should have stopped at one, like the original Planet of the Apes. Where he's on the beach and he realizes this is Earth.
Mhm.
Humanity has just destroyed it. Uh, to leave it there would have been perfect, just an iconic moment, and but they had to keep adding things to it, and it every time they did, it was a little less poignant until finally, you just don't really care what's going on.
Yeah, it's a little unfortunate, like that. That's how I feel like about Star Wars, to be honest. Like they just did so much so well with it in those first, three, and then they, just like you said, it's just the flair, the thing that brought you there in the first place. It's just overdone, and just who cares at this point? But
Yeah,
I mean, I'll still
it's
watch it.
like, when they started doing sequels to Pirates of the Caribbean, kind of.
Yeah.
It's like the first one was so great, and then they're doing more, and they don't make as much sense as the first one, and finally they come out with one, and you don't even watch it because you can't exactly remember what happened in the last one, and you're like, what?
Yeah. So I was thinking we can move on from movies. I actually
Yeah.
wanted to ask you about your film. So you are in the process of finishing editing a short film that you made, a horror film that's has 80s vibes to it, right? It is
Yes,
basically
indeed.
this. So I will let you explain what it is about, and if you want to, and also what what gave you the inspiration, like what was the story behind your film.
I'm originally from Roanoke, Alabama. I always tell people not the big one in Virginia, the little one in Alabama. On the main strip, the old Martin Theater, it burned down in 1980, well before I was ever born. And the official story is that it burned down on Friday the 13th while they were showing Friday the 13th.
Mm-hmm.
That's how that's how I heard it. That's the perfect inciting incident for a horror film. A theater fire. That's perfect. So eventually, a story kind of formed. I thought, what if there was an indie horror film, like 80s style, a slasher flick, and what if like like happens so many times, a lot of times if a lot of times a movie gets more publicity if people know it's an actor's last film. It tends to get more publicity. I don't know if that's morbid fascination or if people just genuinely want to see their last work. I'm not sure which it is, but it always seems to be that way. So I started thinking, what if you had the premiere of a movie and a theater fire happened? An old outdated projector overheats and burns the theater down. What if one of the actors didn't make it out? And what if that's how this indie film gets catapulted into the national spotlight? So I started thinking. So just on I started just on a hunch. I just out of curiosity, really, I looked up the old theater that burned down, and I found out they actually recently reopened it as an outdoor theater. And so after I had my idea, and then I saw that, I was like, okay, what if after all these years the theater reopens, invites everybody back for the premiere they never had, and some strange stuff starts happening. So that and that eventually that became my script. That some strange things start happening after the actors kind of reunite back in their old hometown, back in the theater that burned down, and it's both nostalgic and traumatic,
Yeah.
and then it just gets really traumatic.
Right, right. I mean, it's gets bloody and all the things, right?
Exactly.
So great. Yeah. No, that's so did anything bad happen? I mean, other than the fire, did anything weird happen after that?
Well, I have my main character, uh, Megan Hofer plays her. You probably know her. She plays her, and she's kind of harboring a secret. It's like she wanted celebrity status so much that she was glad this happened, even though a close friend of hers got killed. So trouble is, he knows her really well, and he knows that that's how she would react. So after being dead all this time, it doesn't. He can no longer. I want to say live with it, but he's dead. So
Yeah.
he can no longer live with the anger because he knows that she's the type that would. And so he decides to play a game with her. So all of her co-stars from the movie, they start dying off one by one.
Uh-oh.
No one knows who's doing it. Is it an obsessed fan because of the reshowing? There's kind of a buzz going around that the movie wouldn't have done well if someone hadn't died at the premiere. That's what kind of propelled it into the national spotlight. So, is it an obsessed fan who loved the film and wants to add another chapter, or is it a naysayer who thinks, this never would have happened if this guy hadn't died.
So
So
it's a question. It's a big question that everybody's trying to figure out because that's the problem. Like we don't know who's killing everybody. Like is it one of the actors on that was part of the film? All that kind of stuff, right?
yeah, exactly. At first, you don't know. At first, you don't know, and the only clue is that whoever's doing it is wearing the same costume as the movie villain. So, is it some nut that found the costume on eBay, or is it the one who died? No one quite knows for sure.
Nice, nice. When do you think you'll be releasing it, or when you'll be done with it?
I'm hoping I'll be done by the end of July. That may be aiming a little high, but I'm hoping I'll be done July in at the end of July or the beginning of August. I've had so much trouble editing the final scene because things are happening like at the exact same time but in different rooms. Getting everything synchronized, I had no idea it would be that tricky, but it turned out it was. And just parallel action happening in different rooms. I never knew that could be that tricky. And as soon as I started editing, I was like, wow, this is more challenging than I realized.
Yeah, because it's a lot of it is how long do you stay with one room and then when do you move to the next, right? And does it
Exactly.
ruin the pacing? Does it ruin the story if you spend too long at one place rather than another? That kind of thing.
Exactly right. That's exactly it.
So that would is that the biggest struggle that you've had with the film?
It is, and just with my own worries about, am I cutting this the right way? Am I do it's like I just constantly second guessing everything since this is really my first indie project. And when you don't have a school deadline, you tend to go back and check things a lot more often than you did before. And
Absolutely. Yeah, I get
you know,
that. So how long? What is the runtime?
I'd say it's probably going to be about 11 minutes,
Okay,
uh, maybe 10 and a half.
that's solid. Yeah, yeah. I think
But
that'll be fun to watch.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you think of it.
Yeah. Is it speaking of that film? Is there anyone you'd want to give a shout out to that helped you make it?
Absolutely. My cast, Megan Hofer, she did an outstanding job. She did an outstanding job. Jennifer Felton, she did an outstanding job. Adam Cowdsey, he did an outstanding job. He's playing the sort of archetype. He's the fun character. He's the one that it's a party when he shows up.
Sure.
So yeah, we did a scene with him at a pool hall. Oh man, he did a great job. Pavel Vedek, he did a fantastic job. He's the last one to get killed on screen, and did an absolutely perfect job. And Joe James, he's playing the villain. Uh, he did a really outstanding job. I mean, he can do scary really well. I mean, he can do scary really well, and it's really surprising because he's really a quiet, soft-spoken, nice guy. So, to see all this vengeful rage coming out of this nice guy, it's really surprising.
Yeah, no, it's not easy to do scary, right? Like there are some people that can do it very well, but some just can't do it, right? Like
Yeah,
um the guys who played the different actors that played Jason, right? For the Friday the 13th franchise. I actually got to
yeah,
meet Kane Hodder at the it was at a this festival, this horror fest. It was called Rocky Mountain Nightmares here in Denver, and yeah, like I watched a documentary about him and what he was saying. Well, not just about him, but horror movies in general. But he had said that, you know, because he doesn't say anything, everything's physical. So like, how are you going to show that you're scary without saying anything? And so the way you walk, the way you move your arms, like every little motion, like if you don't do it right, it's not going to come off as scary. It could be awkward, it could be weird, but if you do it right, then then it makes a difference for sure.
Yeah, yeah, that it definitely does. It's like uh, I don't know if you've seen the movie Soldier from 1998. Uh, I
um
really consider that to be Kurt Russell's best performance, and it's really because he had no lines. Everything had to be written on his face,
mhm.
and he did that so well. I really consider that, and I don't think it did well at the box office. I, I think it did pretty badly at the box office, but it really shouldn't have because I really consider that to be his best performance of all time, and it's because he barely had any lines. Everything had to be written on his face.
Yeah, those types of movies, just the reactions, right? The reactions and all of that make a huge difference in whatever film that you're creating. And yeah, I mean the actors have a big part of that. I mean, obviously you're directing them what to do, but if they don't have that it factor for those things, you're not going to believe it, you're not going to be invested, and it's not going to matter as much, right?
Very, very true.
So it's not easy. I mean, that's why they pay the directors the big bucks, right? Like, and hopefully they will start paying the writers more, right?
Hopefully so. I certainly hope so.
Right. With the writers strike and everything that's going on, you that's kind of the hope is that and it's never really made sense to me that like writers are they're the first people to create this world, right? And they do such a good job with it. I don't know. People just need to give the writers, especially when they're writing about from personal experience, more credit and their due, I guess.
Very true, and cinematographers as well. My DP Eric Strange, he did such a phenomenal job getting the shots for the movie I'm editing. He did such a phenomenal job. Uh, it was really amazing. There's actually one shot of Megan as she's walking toward the kitchen. She finds a dead body in the kitchen, and he had a skateboard in the trunk of his car, and it's sort of the indie filmmaker's dolly.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so he's sitting on the skateboard, and I'm rolling him toward the kitchen, and he gets this it's like Megan walks into the kitchen and then she finds Jennifer lying there dead, and he just got this incredible shot, just rolling in and rounding the corner slowly, and then then you see her lying there, and it is just such a beautiful scene.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good guy and he's really talented.
Oh yeah,
I've had a couple of classes with him at the film school too, and yeah, I mean, I wholeheartedly believe in his talent, and I'm excited to see the film. I think it's gonna be fun, and I'm always about slasher and anything that brings back the '80s to the people who knew it well, because there are people who don't know it well that try to recreate it and it's trash.
yeah.
And I don't expect that from you. I can't wait to see your film. I think it's going to be fun. One thing that you talked about is the Esquire, and you actually sent me a picture of a model, a miniature that you guys had made. And I'm curious how. I mean, it's solid. Like, how did you guys make that?
I actually made it on the front porch. I just got some lumber and some metal grate to put down for the roof so that I I wanted the flames to kind of shoot through the mesh, and by like injecting cold water into hot candle wax inside the model. And I don't know if that worked that well. It was, I've seen them do it on some science shows where they add cold water to hot wax and it causes the flame to shoot up. I don't know if I did it quite right, if the water was cold enough. I'm not sure which it was, but uh, yeah, we filmed at a fire training facility in Aurora. Great folks, and but honestly, it probably took me longer to build it because I don't know my measurements. They say measure twice, cut once. I measured 3 times and I cut 5 times because something just wasn't adding up, literally.
Right, right. No, that I mean, it came like the picture you sent. It looked gorgeous. Like it looked very, very much like the real place. And
Thanks, thank you.
but it's got to be sad though. Like when you spend all this time making it, it's like, hey, let's set it on fire. Let's do
Yeah.
that. Like, oh God, right? Isn't that scary? You're just like, oh no, I just spent all this time on it, and we're gonna put fire through it. Like,
That's true. It's like my mom says, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs. You gotta, you know.
man, like that, because I don't know, like I think about the work that goes into that sort of thing. Because I mean, I know I haven't built something like that in that intricate and everything, but I've done some stuff, and I just think about like just destroying it, and it's like, oh wait, how many takes are we gonna get of this? And
Yeah,
is it gonna work? Like, because this is costing time and money, and it's one of those things that just wow, like I guess we'll see. Got to give you some anxiety, right?
it really did, and it's a few of the little light bulbs the little battery powered lights. A few of them burst from the heat, but mostly it's still intact. I think a little new paint, and I think you'd never be able to tell what it was used for.
Nice, nice.
But yeah, oh man, my mom did so much work. She did so much work helping out on the film. She, would bring the cooler with the sodas but she did so much besides that. She'd never say this herself, but she did the work of 20 people. She'd never say that herself, but everybody else would say that. She, I, we were filming in a hotel. It's a part of a national chain, so I said I wouldn't use the name of the hotel. I told the manager I wouldn't.
Sure.
No logos, no names, because it's a national chain.
Absolutely.
But we got there, and I did like an entertainment news show that an anchor is on. He's giving the backstory and kind of just giving the exposition. And the opening shot is Megan sitting watching this news special. It's like Entertainment Tonight, but we named it something else.
Sure.
We got there with the DVD player, and we were going to hook it up. The TV in there wasn't made to hook up HDMI cables to. I think it was a newer television, but it just wasn't. It must have been like hotel issue that
Right.
is just not made to hook anything else into. So Ma ran home, got our big screen television, loaded it in the car, and drove it all the way back. Just a huge amount of work. She did that. She was helping with wardrobes, stitching up things that had torn, and just all kinds of stuff. She was not. She'll say she was only a grip, but she's the producer. I mean, let's be honest. She's the producer. She, the film cost a lot of her money, and she and my sister, they're online college professors, and I'm, just fresh out of film school. So all the money spent on it, they funded. They funded. It was all. They'll tell you it's the whole family's money, but
Sure.
they're the ones who earned it. So
Well, that's great. Like that's really cool that they were willing to not just help pay for everything, but also, put their time in, and that, for all the things that you just said, like it's tough, especially, like weird things like a TV not having an HDMI port. Like that's,
Yeah,
You can't make that up. How does a TV not have an HDMI hookup, right? And like,
exactly. I was not expecting that.
no, and those are the things that that you run into on set. That kind of, it's not a happy surprise, but it is a
Yeah,
surprise nonetheless. So
very true.
we're actually running a little low on time. I wanted to make sure we get to the your paranormal experiences.
Oh, sweet.
Because, yeah, I mean, is there anything else you'd like to say about your film before we move on to that?
Oh, just that. I forgot to mention Ace Engler, who played in the film. He's also composing the score, and he's already shown. Let me listen to like an original song he wrote with lyrics and everything for the closing credits, and oh man, it's great. Wait till you hear it. It's fantastic.
And yeah, I can't wait because uh, music can make or break a film, especially a horror film. So we had just talked about with John Carpenter. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm excited. I mean, obviously you can't expect John Carpenter like genius type stuff, but like either way.
And really hit the score, the instrumental score he made. It's fantastic. I mean, I really think you'll be shocked. A freelance musician could come up with something that truly fantastic. It's really unreal. It's very eerie. Piano driven in
Nice.
very treble tones. Very eerie. But yeah, another interesting story. We filmed outside of Rackham Billiards in Aurora, unheard of in the filmmaking industry. They let us film right outside the main entrance while they were open.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
I mean, that's unheard of in the industry. That
That is.
never happens.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. So that's really cool. Like it's not easy to film anywhere, but to get that kind of access is pretty amazing. Moving right along, I'm sorry we got to go on just to get to this paranormal stuff because I am super into the paranormal as well. And you said that you had some experiences with the paranormal, which obviously is interesting, but also I think something that people are coming to this podcast for as well. It is not This podcast is not just for horror movies or film production, but it is also the paranormal. What kind of experiences have you had?
Well, I've at our old house in Florida. I one night. Now, I've never seen anything, but I've I've heard a lot of things that I couldn't explain, and even felt at one point something I couldn't explain. Our old house in Florida. I was lying in bed one night. I could hear this ragged breathing coming from. It sounded like under the house. It was a strange experience. This ragged breathing, and I actually remember I was like, it's probably me, So I held my breath and I listened, and it kept going on. Now, my family, they were watching a movie in the living room, way far away, and this wasn't coming from
Man.
the living room. So I just kept listening, and I kept hearing this. This ragged breathing. It sounded like a horse that had just ran a marathon. It was the strangest thing, So
Yeah, no,
you
thank you.
know,
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you moved. But the thing is, it's Florida, so who knows? It could have been like a crocodile with asthma. Who knows? Like
yeah. Sometimes we get armadillos under the houses. I know a neighbor's house had an armadillo under their house, so I don't know how loud they get, but you
right.
never know. But
Maybe.
yeah, another really odd experience in that house. A lot of things happened in my old room, and I remember laying in bed, like waking up, and I felt someone sit on the edge of my bed. So I woke up, and I actually looked over, and I thought, I thought someone had just come in to check on me.
Sure.
We do that a lot. My uncle passed away. He had congestive heart failure. He died in his sleep. So ever since then, rest his soul, we've been really worried about each other. We check on each
Sure.
other. We peek in, make sure everybody's breathing okay, and stuff like that. So I just assumed someone was checking on me, and I said hello, and nobody was there. So another really weird,
That is
another
weird. Like,
really,
just to respond to that real quickly,
yeah,
like I don't know how I would feel about feeling, because you can feel it when somebody sits on your bed. Like
yeah,
you definitely know that there is a presence there because it's a physical thing. And then when you get up and you look around and there's nothing there, that's eerie. It's not a sound as much as it is a feeling. And yeah, that's tough.
yeah. That really freaked me out at the time. I looked, nobody was there. I'm like, okay. Same room, I had a strange experience. I was waking up one morning. I felt someone holding my hand. Now I'm Southern Baptist, so normally I would say that it was God, but it didn't feel like a man's hand. It felt like a lady's hand. Been going through some depression at that point, so I normally I would have assumed he's just you know trying to send some comfort, but it felt like a lady's hand, and I'm a traditional type of believer. I don't believe that angels are female. I know they've never been, none of the actual verses that mention angels ever mention female angels. So that's kind of a modern day myth, or at least of the Renaissance era. So I've never believed that. So when I felt a lady's hand in mine, I immediately thought, well, no, there's no basis for that in written theology.
Well, what about a female demon?
You never know. Now, apparently, she must have been worried about me.
Okay.
She must have been worried about me.
How do you know? Was it just you felt the fingers? Was it like, did it grab onto you?
Mm, I felt it, not really grabbing me tightly, just like like someone's hand in mine. It was the strangest experience, but that shook me up because normally I would interpret it with faith rather than fear, but there was, in this particular instance, nothing to really base that faith on. So I got a little I that shook me up a little bit. Uh,
Yes, no, that would be tough. I don't know how I would deal with something like that, because if anything that touches like hands or feet, that kind of thing, it's just, especially if there's nobody in the room, it's
yeah,
it's very, I guess, personal and uncomfortable.
yeah,
So,
very. That was an odd experience, and those three things happened in that house. One really strange thing happened at my grandparents' house in South Carolina. Wanted to save this one for last because it's the best one.
sure,
It's like I was we went up for New Year's Eve. We like to have Christmas together and then hit the road on the 26th. So we headed up on the 26th, stayed at a motel in Alabama, and then continued on. We got there on the 27th, I believe. We always went up there for New Year's. I'd set off fireworks with my cousin, stuff like
sure.
that. So I walk into their little back bathroom. I can hear this music playing, and it was the strangest experience. It was like, yeah, we when we were living in Florida, we stopped off at my dad's house in Alabama, in Roanoke, Alabama. That was before he moved back to Georgia, where he was born. We stayed at a hotel just outside of Roanoke, and then continued on in the morning. We get there on the 27th, and I go back to use the bathroom, and I hear this music playing. It sounds like a stringed instrument, like a harp. And I remember telling myself, I was like 16. I remember telling myself, it's coming from the neighbor's house. That's all. could
Yeah,
be. The
sure.
neighbor's house was way too far away because I remember looking out the little bathroom window and thinking, I can't hear anything from that house. Uh, you know, I remember thinking, nobody plays harp music on a boombox. I can't be hearing anything from that house. So, but I hear this string music, and when I realized it wasn't coming from another house, I ran out of there, didn't turn out the light, didn't stop to wash my hands. I just bolted right back to the living room. What's really weird, though, about that experience, hearing a stringed instrument, is when I was a tiny little toddler, like 2 years old or even younger, whenever we'd go visit grandma and grandpa, grandpa had this old antique mandolin hanging on the wall. And for some reason, I was scared to death of that thing.
Hmm.
I wouldn't go in the room where it was hanging up. Ma and grandma would put it in the closet because I was scared to death of that thing. So 14 years later, I'm hearing string music. That's the really odd thing, and what made me so scared of it in the first place.
That
That
is
was
very
the
weird.
really strange thing.
Yeah, it's weird the noises that scare you right out of nowhere, especially at that young. And who
Yeah.
knows, maybe, I mean, I don't know if you believe in this sort of thing, but like there's past lives, right? So maybe in your past life, something happened while music was playing. Maybe, maybe in a past life, you were murdered while you were listening to this string music, right? Or maybe somebody hit you over the head with a mandolin. Like, who knows?
Yeah, it was the strangest thing. It's like I was, and all it was doing was just hanging there, on the wall, and I wouldn't go in the room. I was scared to death of that thing.
Well,
And
maybe that, I don't know about you, but maybe like you think sometimes things like that there's entities attached to objects. And
yeah,
maybe that was something that you sensed as a toddler that nobody else could sense, right?
yeah. Strangest thing. I wouldn't even go in the room. Ma and Grandma would have to put it in the closet whenever we went in there. Whenever all of us went in that room. I just seeing it hanging there for some completely unknown reason, that thing scared me to death. 14 years later, I hear the stringed instrument playing in the bathroom, which is right next to where they had it hanging up.
You said you were two, and that's what you said that your mom said that they had to put it away from you. Do you remember that? I mean, 2 years old is that's hard to remember stuff as a 2 year old. Do you actually remember being fearful?
I actually do. I remember I wouldn't go in there. Just seeing it on the wall there, it scared me to death. And I have no idea why. They had a piano in the other room, and I was fine with that. I'd sit there bang on the keys all day. The thing didn't work, so I didn't make any noise and bother anybody.
Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. That'll definitely be something to do some research on. Maybe something with your family in the past, maybe something, who knows. There's so many weird things about this world that trigger things inside yourself, that are unexplainable, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
that's why we're here. That's why we're talking about this stuff.
Yeah,
But
and that actually wasn't the only thing that ever happened there. They told us that there's a family story. Apparently, it's like my grandpa had an old antique clock, like probably about 200 years old, and it hadn't worked in probably half that time. Nothing lasts that long, nothing will tick like a Timex. But he had it up on top of this wooden bookcase in their house. On the night this happened, that clock hadn't worked in probably 75 years, probably. One night, my great uncle died, and the moment it happened, the clock chimed the hour.
hmm,
It hadn't worked before or since. So that was really crazy. I'm glad I wasn't there to hear that because I think that would have sent me running out to the neighbor's house that doesn't listen to harp music on the boombox.
yeah, exactly. No, that's weird. That's those types of things. Again, it's weird the types of things that can happen, when loved ones pass, and in that particular situation, it's like, did he have a connection with the clock? or was it just his way of saying farewell? I'm
Yeah.
okay. Who knows, right? It makes you think. It makes you want to know more, right? And that's kind of what we're here for, just to try to talk it out and figure it out, but at least pose the question so you can think about it some more.
Yeah, it's so funny, like so many mysteries, you know, you almost don't wanna know a scientific explanation just
Right.
because it's such a fun story, you know? It's like you almost don't wanna figure it out. It's like when I'm watching a show about Jack the Ripper, you know, when I'm watching and they speculate on who it was, you know? In a way, I hope they never find out because, you know, that would kinda ruin the story.
Almost like a magic trick, right? It's like, oh,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
know how it happened, like it takes away the magic, right? So
Yeah, speculating is so much fun. You sit around after dinner, you know, you know, it makes a great living room story.
yeah. So great, man. This was fun. We'll have to do this again.
We've got to. This has been a blast. I've just enjoyed this like crazy.
And I think next time we could have you. We could even have one of or two of your cast members if you'd want to invite them on. And if we, once you get your film finished, whatever you want to do, or even a family member if you want. Like again, this isn't just about production. This isn't just about filmmaking or horror. This is also paranormal experiences and all of the things. The wondrous curiosities in the world, right? Do you have anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
Uh, just that this is a great show and keep doing what you're doing because I'm sure I'm not the only one who's enjoying this.